Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
I'm KC.
And I'm Tyler.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast.
We have got another gear-intensive deer season archery prep podcast coming for you here. We pre-recorded this thing back in April on the way to go hunt turkeys with our bro, Chadrick Rice of Cruiser Saddles. Chad is the man, and he tells it just like it is. He says, it's like this, man, and it's like this, all right? You need to get yourself a Cruiser saddle if you hadn't, because the season of 2022 is about to be one of the longest, the hardest, but the most enjoyable, because you need to hunt out of a comfortable saddle. Those days of discomfort need to go away. So go check out Cruiser Saddles. And also, OnX is a thing that we use all the time. We actually have been on this thing on the road while we're traveling, scouting out this turkey stuff. We're OnX Elite members, and you need to be one too, because OnX Elite members have certain privileges, as they say. They get the upper hand in some situations. And one of those things is the First Light season opener sale that's coming up soon. If you're an OnX Elite member, you get first access, first dibs at all the super duper discounted First Light stuff. So make sure you are an Elite member today. Truck casting again. Man, we are headed to Tennessee to go shoot turkeys, and we're just slobbering over cool boats that we're seeing along the way and looking at cool creeks. But man, I got fishing on the brain, but hunting's on my heart all the time. It's just it's down deep, you know.
That's some good stuff there.
Man. I'm about to start a T-shirt business. You know, I think
it's like redneck poetry.
Yeah, call it private land tees. Because I'm a tease, you know what I'm saying? So, anyways, we have recorded some of these podcasts to kind of talk about some different gear stuff, kind of on a real basic level, because, man, people go nerding out about this stuff and just spitting off acronyms. They don't even know what they are sometimes. So we're going to talk about some different stuff in the hunting world that might help you out. We've talked about broadheads and some other things. We've talked about arrows and some other things. Today we're going to talk about broadheads, and projectiles.
A head that's broad.
To be exact. So, Tyler,
yeah,
what do you shoot at your target?
What do I shoot at my target? I shoot a 125 grain field tip.
Field tip.
Yeah,
also
which
known
is
as field point.
Field point.
Just tips.
It's illegal to hunt with in Texas.
It is. It is
probably
illegal
in most, if not all, states.
So you grouse guys, you just better watch it.
Well, yeah, I guess I would say, I don't know. That's probably a deer hunting thing.
It might be. But I think deer projectiles have to be 7/8.
That's right.
In most places. So
I don't know about squirrel projectiles, though.
Are all field tips created equal?
No.
They are not.
They're not. There are, just like almost everything in this world, there are different grades of field tip that can be more expensive or less expensive. And now I am definitely on the wrong end of this interview So I'm going to switch this around pretty quick.
This was an interview.
I am the interviewer.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't know a whole lot about gear, but I can say that they are definitely higher grade field tips, and there are also different styles where there's like one that looks like kind of if you take a half of a football, it just goes, it just basically rounded straight to a point like that. And then there are some that kind of like flex in and then up straight and then into a tip. It's kind of hard to explain, but you might know more about what those are actually called.
Dude, I don't have a clue. I think that some of them are molded to kind of resemble the aerodynamics of a broadhead. I think some of that's mumbo jumbo. There's also like practice heads that come with some broadheads sometimes too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of silly. But
I like them. I used to use back when I shot some Rage stuff.
Yeah.
Which is what I'm also creating by making that comment. They used to have I had like a 3-blade mechanical Rage, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. That was pretty slick.
Yeah. And I had a practice tip with that. But it really, what I like about it is it gives you confidence. So, like if you're, for instance, I got these Grim Reapers that are a hybrid. It's got a 2-blade fixed and a 2-blade mechanical. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you shot those yet.
I have.
They have a practice head in that package, and I like that because I don't technically know
that.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know that with those 2 fixed blades on there, I don't know for sure that is going to hit where my field tips are. You know what I mean? So I kind of like that confidence boost of being able to just go shoot it once or twice before you go hunting and be like, oh, yeah, it's hitting where I want it to.
Yeah. Guys, now let's give a caveat here. If your broadheads aren't hitting where your field tips are, it's not because the broadheads are bad. It's because there is human error involved. And guess what? We all have it, okay? Mm-hmm. So don't think...
Romans 3, bro.
Oh, man. Don't think it's because you have, faulty equipment. And it could be that your bow is out of tune or your arrows are out of tune or something is not good there. But that's all still human error because it's something you need to fix, right? Almost every broadhead that is a brand name broadhead.
You're saying human error?
Yeah.
Like an era?
Uh-huh. That's how I say it. That's how it is.
Sorry to cut
it's
you
like
off.
that.
I had to throw it in there.
There's some eBay specials you can buy that I can't promise you anything on those, right? But most all your regular broadheads, your name brand ones, are going to be quality enough to hit where your field points are if you can reduce the amount of human error necessary to make that happen. With that being said, there are different grades of field points. I like shooting the stainless steel nice ones. There's a real popular brand out there nowadays that has some really, really expensive ones that I think are kind of silly. They kind of look like, I don't know, like something you'd make out of Play-Doh when you were a kid or something. But I like there's some that you can buy on Amazon that are... it might be maybe like Gold Tip or somebody like that. I don't really know, but they're nice and they're not super expensive, but they are more expensive than the little like 9 cents per one that you get at the bow shop. Yeah, I don't like those that much. But they'll tell you at the bow shop too that those are just pretty much made to just get you on paper, or whatever. If you're trying to really zone in. Personally, I like to shoot broadheads at a target, but. That's just me.
What are the disadvantages of that?
Of shooting a broadhead at a target?
Yep.
Ruining arrows is the number one disadvantage. The other disadvantage is you dull your broadheads and you tear up your targets.
That's right.
So targets last Tyler twice as long as me. That's the truth because I just cut mine up real bad. The advantage of shooting a broadhead at a target is that you... can see flaws in your form a whole lot more because we're
talking fixed blades pretty much right now, right?
Yes, exactly. When I say
we might should have gone about this a different way, but we're in it. We're in it.
Yeah. So there's essentially 2 types of broadheads. There are fixed blades and there are mechanicals. Somebody's going to say, well, there's hybrids. Well, hybrids are mechanicals because they have some mechanical aspect to them. They just so happen to have
fixed blades protruuding.
Yeah, they have a fixed aspect as well. So I shoot fixed blade broadheads at my targets, even though oftentimes I shoot mechanicals at animals. But a fixed blade at a target is, what would it be like? It would be like you've seen those like wiffle ball kits that you can throw like ridiculous curveballs with and stuff.
Yeah, what are those called?
I can't remember, but it's kind of like
blitz ball or something.
Yeah, blitz ball. That sounds right. It's kind of like using that as practice for hitting curveballs. That way, like when you got to hit a real baseball that's curving, it's not near as big of a deal.
Looks like a four seam.
Yeah, exactly. It's so that's kind of why I shoot fixed at the target a lot, because I can go outside at 70 yards with a fixed blade, and if I shoot and it doesn't hit where it's supposed to, I know that like I did something. Whereas like, you know, I could torque my bow or whatever with a field point. It's essentially a mechanical, you know, same profile. And you know what? By the time the air gets there, it might all work itself out, and I still hit pretty good. And I'm like, okay, that works whenever there's something kind of deeper a problem there. But this is not a bow tuning or shooting podcast. This is a broadhead podcast. So we're going to get back to broadheads, back to the concept of we're past field points, right? We covered that enough. So back to broadheads. There are fixed and there are mechanical. Mechanical means something on that broadhead moves to make it function to its fullest, okay? That's kind of my definition. So mechanicals have a lot of different shapes, but pretty much it's a razor blade attached to a point, and that's what a mechanical is. That moves. There's retention for the blades, so like something holds the blades in place, and then whenever it hits an animal, it opens up some way or another. There are rear deploying mechanicals and there are front deploying mechanicals. A rear deploying mechanical would be something like a Rage or a Mega Meat. A front deploy would be something like a Grim Reaper or a Schwacker.
So basically, front deploy means that from the front of the broadhead come the blades. Basically, from the front part of the broadhead, the blades start to open, right? And so for a rear deploy, you're looking at blades that kind of exit out the rear and open up that way.
Yeah, imagine like front deploy is like it has to cam over, a rear deploy is it pushes back.
Yep.
Okay. And there's really probably arguments to be made for both. I can just kind of tell you kind of the negatives of each that is said out there. Like, this is what people say about them. I'm not saying I agree with these statements. The statement of a front deploy that people would say that is negative about them is that a lot of times they don't have good entrance holes. I've seen that to be not the case. But I could see also where it could be the case, depending on a situation. They also have been said to take up a lot of energy to get that cam over to happen. I think that you probably should have, if you're shooting a modern compound at modern speeds with a high energy, high momentum arrow, you shouldn't have any issues with that. Rear deploy. Okay, so the good thing about a front deploy a lot of times is that its retainment system is internal. It doesn't always require like a rubber band or a collar or something. Rear deploy,
to keep the blades from opening when you shoot. Right, so it doesn't, so that the blades don't open until it hits the target.
Yep, that's right.
And I know another negative that you hear a lot of times about front deploy is if you're shooting at an angled target, such as a deer that's quartering away, that people say that blade, the near side blade, catches first, and that it can turn the arrow and do weird things.
I could see that being the case.
I could see that being the case too. But at the same time, like, it's the same concept as losing a lot of energy. You probably have enough momentum and energy, or you should, to kind of overcome that.
Yeah. And you can also take better shots.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I shot Nameless quartering away with a relatively light arrow with a 3-blade mechanical and did plenty of good work. Front deploy.
Yeah. Yep. So thanks for bringing that up. I didn't really think about that, but that is the case. Now, rear deploy. Almost every rear deploy broadhead has to have a disposable retention system for its blades. Can you think of one that doesn't?
I feel like, man, I haven't used a rear deploy in a while, but that Rage
no
3-blade, yeah, there's also some that the tip like pushes down. Aren't those rear as well? Maybe not.
Maybe, I don't know, but that is one of the things that a lot of rear deploys have is some type of disposable retention system. There's a Rage no collar, which is kind of weird. It kind of operates on some physics or something, and things like slightly bending or whatever, which is kind of strange.
Is the Sever, that's a rear deploy considered?
Yes.
So, yeah, and that has a band.
It has a rubber band. Rages have a plastic collar. Mega Meat has a plastic collar, which you can redneck it to make some of those things work over once, but I don't know. It's not the greatest thing. Overall, I believe that front deploy broadheads are more durable than rear deploy broadheads, because a lot of times with a rear deploy, you have to have a lot of holes in the broadhead to, or like slots to make the thing work.
Which can be weak points, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not. Like I said, I think the 3-blade Rage I used to shoot, I don't think it had a band, but it was a rear deploy, and
it should have had a collar at the base.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I've always felt more comfortable shooting the front deploys.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a whole lot of experience with that.
Yeah. But that's those are kind of the two different types of mechanicals. Like you were saying, there's 2 blades and 3 blades. And probably 4 blades out there, if I'm thinking right. Yeah, there's some 4 blades.
There's so many designs.
Front deploy. Yeah, everybody's trying to reinvent the wheel on these things.
Meanwhile, Tyler Friel's over there shooting them with Indian points.
That's right. He's just napping his own heads. But the bad rap on mechanicals in general is that they are not durable and that things can break when you hit an animal. And that is very well can be true. So to overcome that, it is important to find one that you feel is durable. And I am guilty of, for a long time, shooting a not very durable mechanical. I shot Rage Extremes for forever, like a lot of us did. Those old kind of like puke green colored ferrule ones, you know. So it had like a weak aluminum ferrule with thin steel blades. And it would cut the tar out of some stuff. Super sharp, right?
Yeah. But
just not durable at all. I mean, after you'd shoot anything, that thing would be cocked over to the side bent. Like I shot a coyote and it was bent, you know, like they just were not durable at all. And I killed some stuff with them. But I also can see where...
Did you kill an elk with one?
I did not kill elk with one of those. I killed an elk. I killed 2 elk, both of which were killed with hypodermics. Rage hypodermics, which is probably the most popular broadhead out there these days, for good reason, because they definitely work. I have some things to say about them that could be bad, but they work just fine. They're rear deploy 2-blade. Nowadays, I like to shoot a little bit higher quality broadhead because I found that on those, a lot of times you had to bend them to make them spin true. They'd be a little bit off on their center axis. And also, the blades are just so thin on them, man. Like, you can just hit about near anything with that blade and have it bend. And you do that on a near side rib, then you're really, really limiting your penetration because you're trying to push something not sharp or not square through an animal, and it's just kind of tough. Nowadays, this past season at least, I shot a Grim Reaper as well as you did, and we really, really liked those. 3-blade front deploy, high-quality materials. Still some aluminum in there, but some high-quality aluminum. You know, not all aluminum's made the same, just like not all steel's made the same, right? You can set, like some Craftsman tools, you can set them outside, and they won't rust for a little while. At the same time, you can buy those black sockets from Harbor Freight, and them things will rust before you get them out of the package, right? So, like... Not everything's the same just because it's called one thing. Aluminum's the same thing. You know, there's aluminum cans, and then there's aluminum airplanes. Which one's more durable, right? So, like, the stuff, I don't think I ever bent a ferrule, which, okay, let me slow down, guys. The ferrule of a broadhead is the middle part, that thick part, and then you have blades that protrude off of that, right? So imagine...
It's typically thought of as conical or round, right?
Yes, like a field point is pretty much a ferrule without blades, okay? I'm not saying F-E-R-A-L, like a feral hog. It's F-E-R.
2 R's.
R,
I believe.
E-L, I think.
U-L-E.
U-L-E. Ferule. Yeah, that's
Ferule.
right. That's right. Good job, sir. Anyways, feral composition is pretty important, and feral length matters to an extent to that too, because one of the drawbacks of those 3 blades that we shoot is that they're really long, and so there is room for failure in there. You know, the shorter something is, the stouter it is. We talked about that in our arrow podcast, right? So whenever you lengthen that out a little bit, you do have a potential for the point to curl or something like that bad to happen if you have inferior materials, right? Now, what's cool about those that we shot this year, they have a carbide cutting tip out there on the end, so they're real strong on the end.
See that scar right there?
Yeah, perfect.
It hurts.
Tyler's not the best at not cutting his hand with his broadhead.
I'm an idiot. I put like this scar is still pink, okay? And this was done in mid-November.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the year before you did the same thing but with a fixed blade.
And like it was like bloody. It looked bad on Instagram, but like then I had somebody, when I cleaned it up, somebody was like, "Oh yeah, it's not that bad." I was like, "No, you don't understand how deep it is. It's like a small cut, but it is way up in there."
Yeah. So be careful is the main thing. Okay, so blade attachment is an important thing to talk about on mechanicals as well. It's a lot harder to see. It's much more of an experience thing. It's kind of a weak point of mechanicals, and where a lot of them break is where the blades meet the ferrule and whatever little pin is in there to hold them in there. So you just kind of have to shoot one or trust your buddies to find out what is a good one for that. They also have a weak point with the blades themselves. A lot of times they're thin, like razor thin, like a Rage, where they're super sharp, but they're made out of low quality metal, and they are not very thick, so they bend and they chatter and they hit a rib and they just are not sharp on the other side. Right?
What's chatter?
Chatter means...
The sound?
Yeah. It's what your teeth do when a big bucker is coming in. Chatter means, like, say you take a razor, like your kitchen razor, or your, not kitchen razor, what is that? Your bathroom razor, like what you're shaving your face with, right? And say you run that like along the edge of your granite countertops if you're nice, have a nice house. I have Formica and it still might work. When you look at that razor's edge, it's not going to look straight and sharp anymore. It's going to have some little like dips, waves, valleys, and even little breaks in it and stuff. That's edge chatter is what that's called. So like, you remember that hatchet you played with when you were a kid? And you got it for Christmas and it was real sharp, and then you hacked some rocks with it, and then it had them big old dents in it. Yeah, that's chatter. So
try not to hit your shin with it.
Yeah, dude, I can't believe it. And had to go to the hospital with the hatchet when I was a kid.
Jet loves when we go to HOODIES and there's tools, you know. Golly, I'm like, you know what that is? That's a shin breaker. Okay, you're not gonna buy that.
Oh yeah, see, that's a finger slicer. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those.
It's like an ice pick on one side, and then it's got like the actual like hatchet on the other. I'm like, nope, that's how you come home with no feet.
No feet. That's funny. Okay, those are all problems with mechanicals. What's one of the really, really good things about a mechanical, Tyler?
They shoot where your field tips shoot for the most part. So you can rely on the fact that if you're shooting your field tips and it's dead nuts in the zone, that when you put a mechanical on there, it's going to shoot in the same spot. And the part of that is the fact that a mechanical it's not as susceptible to your flaws as a fixed blade is. So you may not even be holding it the same way or putting your tongue right or whatever, but like it takes a lot of that out of it. So like when you're talking about, for another advantage here, when you're talking about hunting out of a saddle where your form may be slightly different, or you may be swung around, or you may be laid back instead of standing up in your yard. Same thing if you're hunting off the ground, could be a different form than you're used to. the advantages of a mechanical is that you don't have to think too much about the way you do it, nor have you had to practice for 5 or 10 years to get your form to where it literally doesn't change no matter how you do it. So for me, I choose the mechanicals for the most part because that's important to me, is to know, like the main thing I'm thinking when I'm about to draw on a deer is when do I draw, not hold this way, you know what I mean? So, and I'm trying to shoot this deer before he figures out that I'm in the woods. So that's why I shoot those. I have shot fixed blades though, and killed deer with them. So, you know, but a 50-yard shot has never been taken by me with a fixed blade.
Yeah.
You know, I have with a mechanical. So I guess, you know, that's the thing that you can also call an advantage to a mechanical is over distance, you're going to maintain that better flight probably.
Yeah.
Whereas wind and other things, form and stuff, can affect a fixed blade.
I don't mean to go back and forth, but I do think before we move on to other good stuff, I should mention another one of the drawbacks with mechanicals is them opening before they're supposed to.
Yeah.
That's a thing I've never experienced, except for when my mechanical hits a blade of grass on the way to where it's supposed to be. But sometimes they can just do it mid-flight. So also a drawback there, however, not common. Another thing that is really, really good about mechanicals, I would say, is lethality. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is cutting diameter for one. You know, I mean, because you have a more stable flight, you have the ability to, you know, like, for instance, a fixed blade is typically thought of as a little less stable in flight, right? So if you were to take and make that fixed blade the same size as a piece of printer paper, you want to talk about flying a kite. You know what I mean? Like, that could be real wild. So you can only make them so big before they get really, really unstable, right? And so there's probably, it's like, you know, with all other things, there's some moderation. There's a sweet spot for, or a sweet range at least there. So with a mechanical, you have the ability not only to put bigger blades on there and still shoot fairly or very, you know, straight, but you also have the ability to add blades where you can put 3 or 4 blades in a mechanical broadhead and essentially give yourself more cutting surface. And so, you know, with a most basic, say like with an Indian point, you know, made out of a flint, you've got 2 cutting edges pretty much. And so if your broadhead decides to go through that animal in a certain way, and as it's spinning, and when it gets to that animal, cuts through, it could slice, I mean, right next to a major artery and miss it. But if you go in that same spot with a 3 or 4 blade, you're going to hit it because you're cutting a hole as opposed to a slit.
Yeah, you're not cutting 3 slits. It really does cut a hole. Like you are like releasing tension on a lot of matter inside of an animal.
Right, yeah.
Makes a huge difference. I mean, I shot, y'all see this come September, but I shot a big Oklahoma public land buck with a mechanical and put a hole in this thing. It's pretty sweet.
It is cool, man.
Yeah, so I think that's a huge benefit of mechanicals, man, is just how well they kill stuff, and especially when it comes to 3 blades over 2 blades. I think you and I are both going to agree on that. Like, there's, dude, a lot of y'all remember this, but that old T-Bone Turner commercial. I don't remember even who it was from. It's like, I think it was G3 or something, or
probably,
or it was like, "Do you want a sliver?" or you want a chunk, you know, or whatever. It's funny, man. That's a funny dude.
It's a funny guy.
But, so, like, there's something to it. There really, really is. Now, there are people who should and should not shoot mechanicals. And I will say this as my opinion. You can, not you, Tyler, if you want to, you can, but, like, you listener, if you want to go against what I say, more power to you. I just would give you a warning. You know, I've done a little bit of this stuff and seen some of it. If you shoot really light poundage and lightweight arrows, you're going to have a hard time both with getting that mechanical to open I think this XPO guy is about to hit this concrete barrier right here, dude. He's getting
close.
so close. That's making me nervous. So back on that though, if you a low poundage light arrow like a female shooter or a little kid or even
hunter.
Maybe hunter or a guy who can't pull back a lot anymore or just isn't very strong or whatever. Mechanicals take a certain amount of energy to open up, and if you don't have that energy, you're going to have a hard time getting that thing to open up sometimes. Also, mechanicals take more to push through an animal.
Yeah.
Like they take more energy to
That's kind
penetrate.
of a whole equation, too. It's like, yes, it probably will open, but because of the energy it took to open, lots less penetration.
That's right. So if you're shooting a low energy setup, and I know some people need to, right? Because they just might be small people. Or they might be young people,
or shoulder
whatever.
injury,
shoulder
or whatever.
Injury, whatever it might be. Mechanicals might not be for you. If you're shooting a high energy setup, a heavier arrow with a high poundage bow, like more power to you. Tyler and I do that and smoke some stuff doing that. I think that would be kind of the. Is there another scenario that I'm not really thinking about, like of who should and should not shoot people who live in Idaho should not shoot mechanicals, right?
Yeah,
because they're not legal there. You cannot shoot a mechanical broadhead in the state of Idaho.
So wild.
At an animal, at least. Which, that's crazy.
Seems a little dated.
It does.
I can understand that in like 1991, but
yeah, for sure,
or whatever they came out.
So be sure and check rules and regulations on stuff. Maybe people who hunt in grizzly bears. Might not shoot.
Yeah, the game, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, even, like depending on your setup and stuff, elk, potentially.
Yes.
We're talking about deer here and deer and undersized game. So I could see where I would shoot a fixed blade at an elk potentially.
Yes.
So, but what I would probably do, just me, this is my thoughts, is probably just shoot like the vector hammer, shoot a heavier arrow, and keep. And maybe not shoot the whitetail special broadhead that's a 2.5-inch cut in diameter. I might shoot something that's like a 1.5 or something like that. And so I have a little better penetration with less friction on the blades. And then I also still can shoot out to 80 comfortably and hit that big old elk lung. You know what I mean?
It is so nice getting to shoot at something that has vitals bigger than a 5-gallon bucket. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a cool part about elk. But they do have thick hides. And I can attest to this because I've skinned some, or skunned them, as Garrett would say.
That's right.
Legit, they have a tough skin. So there's something to getting through that. With a big mechanical's kind of sketchy. Cut on contact would be nice to have with an elk, even if you're shooting a mechanical, something that's going to cut as opposed to pierce, if that makes sense. Game,
also,
draw weight. What else?
People say, a lot of people would say that a rear deploy is going to penetrate better. So, if you don't feel comfortable shooting a fixed blade at an elk, then maybe consider a rear deploy if that doesn't scare you.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And honestly, Hunter's been liking those severs. And what's cool about them is you can practice with the broadhead if you want, and tie the blades in so you don't have to go through a bunch of O-rings. But they penetrate pretty well. They're a little bit different than other mechanicals, where it's based off of like the Ulmer Edge, from what I understand. So, there's different options out there for sure, but just those are some things to think about. Yeah.
So, we've been going on for 30 minutes about this, guys. We were going to do both broadheads, but I think that we're going to do mechanicals and fixed blade broadheads. But I think we're going to split this up, actually, and do a part 2 of this where we talk specifically about fixed blades and the different advantages, disadvantages, and types of fixed blades that you can shoot. So remember, check out the other episode, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some meat eater, Phelps, turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.